Hello my friends, I'm Rich Larson and I'm the IRC Tire Guy. Today we are starting a multi-part series, 2-stroke, 4-stroke, and electric technique comparisons. Now this is a series that I have been wanting to do for quite some time, now that we've seen so many electric bikes coming into the motocross market. And now with the introduction of the Stark Varg EX, the off-road specific Stark Varg, I thought what better time than now to compare all the forms of propulsion. Now, even within 2-stroke and 4-stroke, we don't see a lot of technique comparisons. And the fact is, there are some nuances in the way that you ride the 2-stroke versus the 4-stroke. And I want to talk about those through this series. Now, there's a major nuance between 2-stroke, 4-stroke versus electric, that being no clutch. And we are going to get in depth on the specifics of technical riding when it comes to riding the Stark Varg EX. Now, I think this comparison is going to be a lot of fun. My hope is to start with basic techniques and work our way all the way through very technical, hard stuff, and even getting hands-on in some hard enduro sections. So let's start by meeting the players. We've got the 2025 TE 300 2-stroke. This is my Husqvarna. I have been beating the heck out of this thing for quite some time. It's held up amazingly. It's a great bike. And I figured, you know, a European 2-stroke, that's a common bike, and it's a great one for the 2-stroke fans out there. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, we've got the Japanese KX250X. This is the 2025 KX250X. I love the handling on this bike, probably more than any machine that I have personally tested. I feel like I'm the fastest on the turn track. It's gonna be fun to get into that technical stuff on this bike and kind of compare and show you guys the differences between 2-stroke and 4-stroke. And then of course, once again, the all new Stark Varg EX, the electric off-road bike. I have done no testing on this bike. I basically put it together, rode it a bit in the street. I put it in 50 horsepower at one point and said, this is too fast for me. I don't know why I got the 80 horsepower because I don't think I'm ever gonna go there. And I'm not even kidding, it's extremely fast. That being said, I've done about one wheelie on it. So it's gonna be a bit of a learning curve for me to get into the technical stuff. We've got some big obstacles out here. I'm a little bit nervous without the clutch, but I want you guys to see my experience and the differences between the bikes. Again, I am very excited. This is gonna be a long, multi-part series. I hope you guys enjoy this. Make sure you're subscribed, you're following along every week, showing you guys the nuances between bike to bike to bike. This has been awesome. I appreciate your guys' support. Let's get right into it, starting with some basic techniques, but some fundamental techniques that I think every rider should have dialed. Let's do it. All right guys, as I said, we're gonna jump right into it with some basics. I wanted to start with basics because I teach basics all over the US, and the truth is I think the majority of riders don't have that maximized fundamental approach. What I always start with is balance. The understanding here of how you use power and control to maximize and create your balance. Now, in this situation here, this is something I call on-command balance. The understanding of how we adjust from right to left. You can see my head's over my right foot, holding balance to the right with the front, or to the left with the front tire. I change directions. My head goes over my left foot, and I hold balance with my front tire to the right. Now I can use a little bit of slip of clutch as I move back and forth. You can hear a very steady RPM on the bike. You can see I got the clutch cam going here, catching the slight slip, and I'm actually always in the friction zone. At this speed, I'm never going all the way out, and I'm never going all the way in as I adjust back and forth. If I go all the way out, I'll be moving obviously too fast and I'll run the risk of stalling. And if I go all the way in, it actually takes pressure off of my front tire. So you can use that steady feed of throttle and clutch together to help maintain your balance. On-command balance is one of those things that I think is so underrated. That ability to adjust your body from right to left and hold balance in each situation. You can hear the bike's not idling here. That's idling. You can hear it. It actually drops so low that it'll stall. So I'm always just holding that like 8th throttle and putting a little pressure into the front tire to assist my balance control as I adjust from right to left. I can also drag a little bit of front brake here or rear brake, be able to do it both ways. In dry situations, I prefer the front to kind of hold the bike back from running away as I hold this balance. And you can see I'm almost holding throttle and clutch in the same place, and I'm using my front brake to adjust if I need it. As I kind of fall in one direction or the other, I can use that front brake and less slip of throttle and clutch to hold me in position. It's all about these little pieces that I think are so underrated. That ability to hold balance like that comes into play when you hit an obstacle, right? If you're out of balance when you come into an obstacle, you're gonna find it much harder to accomplish that obstacle. I always say it's tough to do anything other than correct your balance when you're out of balance. Now, moving on to our 4-stroke. A very similar technique, but as I said, there are some nuances in the difference between 2-stroke and 4-stroke, even within simple tasks like that. I can feel already just a little bit different of a friction zone here. So I gotta get used to that friction zone. Same steady RPM, and I'm really focusing on trying to keep the bike as low in that power as possible. You can hear I'm right at the bottom of that RPM. Now, I would say hold about an 8th throttle more on a 4-stroke when moving at about this speed. Obviously, 4-strokes run a higher risk of stalling, and that little extra risk of stalling makes it so you have to be kind of focused a little more on that steady feed of throttle and clutch. You have less of a chance of making that correction within the bottom end of the power on a 4-stroke because of, obviously there's 4 revolutions on the piston. That just makes it that much more likely to stall. So we're holding just a tiny bit extra throttle in this situation. Now, I'm still using the head over foot control. I'm also still using my front brake to kind of initiate that control. You can see I'm very smooth with the front brake here. If I need just a little bit of balance, I can kind of slide that or slip that front brake just a little to help me maintain balance from back and forth, right to left. This kind of balance, I'm telling you guys, is so key in your approach and your control. It's so underrated. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I think the average rider doesn't work on enough, and it'll probably get ignored in this video. People want to skip to me hitting obstacles and stuff. The truth is just being able to do what I was doing right there is so key. Now, let's move on to the Stark. Really, I didn't ride this bike at all. I've done a little bit in the driveway. I've done a couple wheelies in the street, but it's definitely different. And it's gonna take some adapting, and I want you guys to see the adapting that I'm making live, right? I want you to see my experience live. So right away, I'm being very steady with the throttle, and I'm dragging quite a bit of both rear and front brake here to maintain that balance control. I would say I'm using a little bit more rear than I would. I'm almost using that rear brake as a clutch in a way. I'm just kind of dragging it and holding it back. That being said, just right off the bat, the roll-on of the Stark is really, really smooth. I've got it set at 30 horsepower right now. And the roll-on is really controllable, which really leads me to believe that it's gonna hold traction really well in the technical situations. I remember riding the Alta. Right when the Alta came out, I wanted to be kind of the first guy to hit a K-rail, Jersey barrier on it, right? So I borrowed one and went and did it. And I'll tell you right now, there wasn't a lot of roll on that bike. It was very, very abrupt. The mapping is not nearly, or was not nearly as smooth as this Stark Vark. You can see I'm just kind of maintaining. I think on this bike, I'll probably, especially at slow speed, be dragging a lot of brake, kind of using the brake sort of as a clutch, I would say, in a way, but it's obviously less focused on that complete friction zone control. Same outside peg pressure in each turn, adjusting back and forth, head over foot in relation to the direction the tires turn. If I'm turning to the right, my head is over the left foot, pressuring the left peg. If I'm turning to the left, I pressure the right peg, back and forth, holding that pressure, being smooth with the power there. You saw, I almost used a little too much to get the bike to move forward there as I kind of lost balance. You're always doing that when you ride. You know, if you think about it, the unbalanced force in one direction or the other, you use the throttle to assist. If I fall in that direction, I add the throttle to regain my balance. If I fall in this direction, I add the throttle. So the cool thing about the Stark already is it's very smooth in the bottom. It's, you know, I'm able to kind of modulate the first quarter of the throttle, and it's a very smooth delivery of power, which I like a lot. We do have a little bit of engine braking on right now. I'm gonna mess around with it and see what direction we go with that. I would say I'll probably take some off, but it feels really, really smooth. Feels really controllable, which is exciting. I'm gonna see how it feels as we move through the next drills. This is one of those things, I think, starting basic, learning just the nuances of each bike itself is so key. Being able to jump from bike to bike is, I think, somewhat of a skill. I'm always trying to practice being comfortable jumping from bike to bike, and this is like probably gonna be one of the biggest changes that I've made. So I need to get comfortable quickly as we move through these drills. Let's move on to the next one. All right, so moving on, we've got one of my all-time favorite drills. The idea I had here was, let's put in cones that aren't gonna move anywhere. So we've got posts buried into the ground, and the focus here is, of course, weaving between them. This is one of those things that I think the majority of riders tend to think they would see it from the outside and say, I could totally do that. I can tell you right now, these are 5-foot gaps. It is extremely challenging to master weaving through cones. And if you think about riding, I mean, that is essentially what you're doing all the time. You're weaving between rocks or putting your tires exactly where they need to be in whatever situation you run into. And the fact is, if you can't completely control it right here, how can you expect to control it in the mountains when it matters? So we're gonna start with the 2-stroke. Let's jump on it and see how it's done. Nice and smooth as I come in. This is very similar to that on-command balance I was talking about, or it's pretty much identical, but now we're focusing on weaving and putting our tires in the correct place. Focusing first on getting my front tire as close as I can to the cone in front of me, especially at this 5-foot gap. Being able to make sure my front tire is very close, oh boy, to that cone in front of me allows me to clear with my rear tire, and that's kind of key when it comes to this approach. Also focusing on a little bit of outside peg weight in each direction, back and forth, nice and smooth. Making sure my swing arm kind of clears there. That felt pretty dang good on the 2-stroke. You guys can see there, it's all about finding that smooth delivery and feed of clutch with the throttle together, not over revving, not under revving, keeping the bike running, keeping it in control as we weave through the cones. Let's move on to the 4-stroke. Same understanding here. We really are focused on that steady feed of throttle and clutch and keeping the bike, especially on the 4-stroke, keeping the bike in that low RPM, but it's just a little bit more. There's almost a little bit of a whine or a hum that I'm looking for specifically on the 4-stroke. I know that if I under rev, I'm gonna stall. And And I really don't want to stall when I'm doing this, or when I'm doing this type of slow speed riding. Now the Cowie has a little less turning radius. I can, ooh, there it is, son. 4-stroke action. I started to chop the throttle, kind of giving it the same amount of RPM that I would have on the 2-stroke. So see, it's just a little bit more, especially at this slow speed stuff. We're just focusing on keeping that bike running. Once again, turning radius is a little smaller, so I have to be very aware. Outside peg pressure, changing back and forth, listening for that, ooh boy, we're close here, on that hum. Look at this, I'm right on the edge. Gonna make an adjustment here. You can hear I'm really close to stalling. And the turning radius is quite a bit less on this 4-stroke, which is actually kind of surprising because this bike turns so dang well. But the truth is that's, yeah, I'm gonna have to adjust for that. There's a lot happening all at once, right? I mean, we have the steady feed of throttle and clutch focusing on not stalling the bike, but also I'm kind of thinking about the lack of turning radius. I have to focus up here, straighten out my line a little bit, get as close as I can. This one's kind of tight. Ooh, that one wasn't bad though. We got it there. Little cheat in action, but if you can do it, is it cheating? Now, as you guys could see there are a few more nuances when it comes to the 4-stroke. I have to hold a little bit higher of an RPM because they're just a little bit more likely to stall. The turning radius kind of got into my head, and that was the thing that ended up making me stall. I really had to focus there to be able to fit between each cone weave. The little bit of higher RPM at slow speed can become challenging, and it's just an adjustment that you have to make on a 4-stroke. Is it possible? Absolutely, it's possible. Jumping from bike to bike is probably the hardest part of this because I go to give it the same amount of throttle that I would on this. Now, to the Stark, it's almost easier to make the transition because you don't have to think about stalling, right? It's not something that I'm so worried about. Really what I'm focused on is just how much throttle to give it. It all comes down to that delivery within your wrist. To me, this will actually probably create a higher level of throttle control, almost dexterity with my wrist as I put more time on this bike. Let's set up and try the cone weave on the Stark. Now we're on the Stark Varg. Again, very focused on smooth delivery of power here. I'm whispering. It's funny, I always try to talk over the bikes, and which is unnecessary because I'm wearing a mic, but listen, I'm not a video guy. I'm literally a dirt bike rider, and I just do my best, guys. Steady throttle, steady feed, smooth brakes, both front and rear. Again, the roll-on of this throttle is honestly really impressive. They've done a great job of mapping the low end power. It's not too much. It feels really controlled. Oh God. These cones are a little bit, I shouldn't call them cones, these posts are just a little bit too tall. Oh, I overshot it. We might have to hop back. Oh, it's heavy, I can't hop it. Yeah, that's gonna be interesting, isn't it? You know, the fact is the Stark is heavy. I've never done front end hops on the Stark. I really need to hold that rear brake if I'm doing a front end hop. Let's just try one here. There we go. That's not bad. You can see there, I had to work a little harder to get the front end into the air during those front end hops. That's the first time I've ever done that on the Stark. It's a little bit different. I had to hold the front brake a little harder. Might have a little air in my rear brake. I should bleed that a little better. Nice and smooth here. Oh boy. It's so weird not having a clutch, making corrections with all throttle. It's just a little bit different. Ooh, nice. Okay, squeeze it. Oh. Yep, overdid it. Let's try again. All right, here we go. Third time's a charm. Once again, first time ever riding the bike, we gotta learn how to make it happen. Slow speed control in a cone weave. These cones are I mean, Nick Thompson and I dug these posts ourselves, and maybe we didn't do that good of a job. I don't know. We gotta get around this one clean. Oh, rotten. It's just a little too tall. I just need to be aware of that. I keep digging a hole. Now I'm making it harder and harder. You guys can see the one that I keep making a mistake on. It's slightly out to the right. So I have to be very aware when I come around this one to set myself up. Damn it. Ooh, look at that. I reached for the rear brake. There we go. Set myself up a little better there. Still spun it, but we're good. Still spun it, made it, just barely. Not bad. It's not as heavy as you think when you're throwing the rear around. The front's a little different, and I almost feel like the front was more just my rear brake not being. That's not bad. 100%. Yeah, there's differences, and it's fun to feel and fun to test. I mean, it's all here. You guys even saw in one of those, I went reaching for my rear brake with my foot, which is not there. The goal here, again, is that steady feed delivery control within the throttle, as well as your balance, your body position, back and forth from left to right around the cones, initiating with that inside peg pressure. You can see I press to the inside, go to the outside. Press to the inside, go to the outside peg. Back and forth, and the smooth delivery of power is key. It's pretty easy to find, honestly, on the Stark. Feels pretty dang good. Let's move on. All right, we're gonna move on to full lock turns. I decided, you know what, let's just stay on the Stark. I'm gonna be very smooth here. Same nice, easy delivery of power. We're gonna find out where the balance point is from left to right on this bike with a full turn. I'm trying to get the front tire as close as I can to the outside, leaning the bike fully. There's one. This will also be kind of a fun turning radius test between all three bikes. There's two. Feels really smooth. It honestly is a great delivery of power, which is really cool. I was worried about, I thought I was gonna be spinning a lot. It's really smooth, and I'm just dragging a little bit of front and rear brake together, which helps settle the bike equally. Also on the big bikes, I can kind of, I kind of screwed up here. Hoo-yah. On the big bikes, I almost have to use all front on this, because obviously if I'm turning maximum to the right, I don't have that ability. I think that was what, 4 or 5.5 or 4.5? I'm not really sure. Come on, girl. Yeah, it's a little harder to front end hop. It is a little bit heavier for sure. Moving on to the 4-stroke. Once again, not as much turning radius, I would say, as either bike, Stark or 2-stroke. This one might be at the biggest disadvantage. Setting up, same spot, smooth feed of throttle and clutch, maintaining just a little more RPM. I don't want to stall. Trying to be really gentle with the front brake. You can see even there was pushing a little bit. 1. I could have got a little closer to that one. 2. That's maximized. 3. Keep turning. Come on, girl. This one almost got me on the start. 4. We were close. About the same as the Stark. I hold the steady throttle as I do front end hops on 2-stroke or 4-stroke, even though I'm holding the rear. 2-stroke a little more than 4-stroke. You guys can see how I do that there. A lot of body position, knees. People always ask me, they're like, do you set your suspension up for front end hops? And I set my suspension up for the ride. You know, front end hops are all about control within body position. Let's try it on the 2-stroke. on the 2-stroke, same approach as the 4 on the front end hops. See, the bike's a little lighter. Still holding steady RPM, a little bit of clutch to assist the front tire into the air. All in the knees though, you guys can see, driving my knees directly to the radiator, snapping them back to lock to assist that front tire into the air. All about the timing within movement and suspension together. Let's see what we got for full lock turns here. Setting up, wide as we can get. Already, I'm inside on my previous runs. The new KTM's turn really, really sharp. It's pretty awesome. They have great turning radius, which does help in slow speed situations. It's nice to have that extra bit. It's just like trials. Steady feed of throttle and clutch. Trials bike really, you can almost turn the front wheel 90 degrees, and that assists with your balance. So the more bike turns, the easier it's going to be for you to balance in certain situations. Look at that. We're on to 5. 5 easy. How amazing is that? Half a turn more than the 2 bikes on the Husky. And some front end hop cheaters. You know, the difference from bike to bike there, more than anything, I'm feeling throttle and clutch between 2-stroke and 4-stroke. 4-stroke, I need to just turn about an 1/8 more to keep it from stalling. You guys saw me stall on the cone weave. Within the clutch control, the feed, the zone is still very small. Both bikes very similar as far as how much clutch I'm using, keeping it in that friction zone the whole entire time. On the Stark, obviously, no clutch. So I'm just so focused on throttle. I actually feel like I'm gripping the throttle a little bit more, just because I'm so focused on how much I'm giving it. So that's kind of interesting. Have to loosen my grip just a little bit. I was kind of feeling that as I was doing. I was like, man, I'm really holding on tight, trying to just modulate just the right amount of throttle. That being said, the roll-on throttle of the Stark is so smooth. It's very, very controllable. It's not crazy, you know, it's kind of neat. You have a very tractable, controllable bottom end power. I'm using both front and rear brakes, dragging front and rear. And in slow speed situations on the combustion bikes, you can drag a little bit of rear and front together, and that will help settle your suspension a little more than using only one or the other. Now, personally, I use a lot of front when I'm doing this slow speed stuff. As soon as it starts to get a little bit more wet, I'll add in rear brake, because that will help just a little bit more with your stopping and controlling that stopping power. On the Stark, you have this kind of ability to use both at the same time, because obviously they're on the handlebars, and you can maintain that ball of foot position, which I really like. It's kind of neat, you know, it's fun changing from bike to bike. I think it's time to start getting a little bit more technical. Let's do a wheelie and see what happens. All right, now we're gonna get into the nuances of control, especially in technical terrain with a slow wheelie. A slow wheelie is sort of a culmination of a lot of different techniques. Being able to get that front tire up into the air efficiently. Obviously balance from left to right control, especially when you're going slow. Fast wheelies are a little bit easier to hold in a straight line, but slow wheelies, it's a lot about that left to right control. Of course, the whole entire time during the wheelie, I'm dragging that friction zone just a little bit, also dragging a little bit of rear brake with my right foot. The understanding here is the maximized control of efficiency to find a slow controlled wheelie. One of the key pieces to get the front tire into the air is using every form of control that you have together. So the goal here is to use suspension, compression, body position, and power together to find an efficient lift. And this is the best way to get your front tire into the air for an obstacle or for doing a cool trick, like a wheelie. Now I want you guys to notice here the major differences in the way you get that front tire into the air from bike to bike, especially when we go to the start. What we're going to use here is suspension compression, body weight forward, and throttle on with the clutch in initially. That creates those three forms of lift with the front tire: suspension, compression, body position, and throttle. Then we unload all three together to get the front tire into the air. So you'll hear when I'm forward, the throttle is on. When I come back, the throttle is off. And this is how I prevent overcooking my wheelie, right? Or breaking my rear fender off. Here we go. Throttle's on when I come forward. Here we go. Smooth delivery, dragging rear. Very nice. All right. Moving on to the four-stroke. Same focus on power here, delivering that power when your front tire or your front suspension is compressed. Here, to get the front tire into the air. Let's feel the nuance here between four-stroke and two-stroke. I've honestly never jumped from bike to bike. I just kind of get on one and ride it all day, right? Nice and smooth. Oh, wow. There's less throttle that I have to give. They almost have like a natural roll speed. So I don't have to give it nearly as much, and the bike just kind of keeps going, which almost makes it easier to wheelie. Yeah, that's really nice. You know, it's less throttle. It won't let me quite go as slow as I could on the two-stroke, but it's almost easier to hold it. Same delivery of power together. Started tipping over there, so straighten it out. And really, it's not that my idle is high by any means. It just naturally rolls on its own significantly than the two-stroke. Like I said, it makes it so you almost don't have to give it any throttle when you're here. Little inputs. Drag of clutch there. Ooh, we were close to stalling. Super interesting. You guys can see there, once again, I know I keep saying it over and over, but it's very important. It's one of the things that I see the majority of riders not do. Driving the weight forward and turning the throttle on, loading the engine, loading the flywheel, then rolling the throttle off as the front tire comes into the air. It's such a key piece for your front tire lift, because if you're using direct throttle, you're running a higher risk of wheeling over. Now, that being said, you can totally use direct throttle. It's 100% possible, but it's safer to load the engine and use the dispersing RPM. We've talked about flywheel so much on this channel. Now, we don't have a flywheel. So this is going to be direct throttle. That rear brake is going to be my friend on the Stark. I've done one of these before, and I will say it was a little scary at first, but I got used to it. And this is the first dirt wheelie, I will say, on the Stark Varg. So hopefully I don't rip the fender off right away. So I still want to use efficiency here. I still want to use body position as well as that suspension compression to assist the front tire into the air. If you're using body and suspension compression, you don't have to use as much throttle, meaning it's that much safer, right? The less throttle you're using, the less risk you're going to have of wheeling over. Nobody wants to wheelie over. And certainly right now I am terrified of wheeling over. So, and there's no clutch, so it's one of those things. I'm getting used to it. This is a different form that I have to get used to, and that's totally fine. So, I'm gonna load front suspension, body forward, front brake on, and then I'm gonna give it gas. Just as an example there, if I try to load front or even front and rear brake together with the throttle, the bike's just gonna lunge forward, right? So it's very different. Front and rear suspension, or load front and rear brake to get my suspension compression, just like that. Then I'm gonna snap my weight back with the input of throttle to get the bike into the balance point, right? Here we go. Front and rear brake together to create that suspension compression. Coming back, rolling on the throttle. This is a different style for sure. I gotta get used to it. I will say the balance point is a little bit higher on this bike because of where that weight is centered, right? It's a little bit more forward, it's a little bit lower. All the weight is in the bottom of the bike. So it makes it so I have to really focus on getting it straight up and down. Now, something that we can do here to create a wider balance zone, and this is on any bike, is focusing on hanging back further. The further you hang back off the back of the bike, the wider that balance zone becomes. Essentially, you're kind of creating a counterweight with your own body. So the further I hang back, the lower my front tire will be, and the lower and safer my balance zone is. So I really have to focus on hanging back more because the weight is so centered in the bottom of the bike, which the weight being low like that is going to be great for cornering and other things, but just a little different for wheelies. Once again, compress, front and rear brake, get the front tire in the air. We're going to try to be smoother on the throttle this time around. There we go. Pulling a little to the right seems kind of funny. Again, I think the delivery of power on the Stark is surprisingly smooth. I didn't feel like I was ever overdoing it there. I was able to kind of find that balance zone and modulate that zone with the throttle, which I'm using a lot more clutch on four-stroke and two-stroke, especially two-stroke. Truthfully, I would say I use more clutch on the two-stroke compared to any of the bikes. That way I can even slow it down a little bit more, but it allows for that kind of adjustment of clutch and throttle at the same time. You kind of get two forms of power delivery, whereas this is one. That being said, the one form is pretty sufficient. I mean, it's really, really smooth. It's really, really trackable. I never felt like I was gonna roll on too much or whiskey throttle, which is from the outside view what I thought was going to happen. In my head, I was like, man, I feel like these electric bikes without a clutch, there's gonna be a string of whiskey throttles. And I'm sure that happens, but I do feel like if you have a little bit of experience, it's not as scary as I thought it would be. Again, going back to the Alta, I mean, I was pretty scared of that thing, doing technical specific riding. It was great on turn track and stuff like that, but in technical terrain, I was like, man, I just feel like this thing is so much power. It just wants to run away from me. Where I'm getting a really smooth, controlled delivery here with the Stark, which is exciting, you know? I think, okay, this isn't too bad. Would I like to have a clutch? Yeah, man, for sure. But I don't know, you know, as I continue to ride it, I think adjust your form, adjust your approach, and it's capable. We're gonna see how capable it is as we move through these episodes. I mean, I think that's a great place to start. Once again, you know, the reason we started with fundamental controls because nobody practices fundamental control. There's a cone weave for you guys here at Jordan River OHV. Go try it and let me know how hard it is, because it's really challenging. It will make you a better rider. Focusing on that stuff will transfer into those technical situations that you get into on the trails. The focus on fundamentals, the focus on control, it is so key. We're gonna get a little bit more obstacle approach. We're gonna get a little bit more technical in next week's episode. Thank you guys so much for the support of the channel. It's amazing that I get to do this. I get to ride all these different bikes and have fun doing it. And I hope the information resonates with you guys. I hope you're enjoying the stuff that we put out. Man, I put out a lot of technique videos and I hope that you guys like them. I hope that they help. I love doing this stuff. I appreciate your support. I hope to see you at some of my clinics around the US. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at IRC Moto, my personal Instagram page at Rich Larson 511. And until next time, keep shredding.